one team that has been noticeably off the pace is Stewart Haas Racing.
Like somebody at another team who said, watch out for the Stewart Haas Racing Fords at Las Vegas, they're going to be strong. Not so much.
Stewart Haas Racing has been overtaken by Hendrick Motorsports and by Chevrolet as a whole, to the point where they're probably not even the second best Ford team anymore.
And so I can promise you they are working hard to find out how to get that rear downforce back, and that becomes very challenging because we all know they have a limited amount of wind tunnel time.
Right, sure.
Tony Stewart and Gene Haas had some high hopes for their race team, the team's 13th year under the Stewart Haas Racing name. It had been 6 years since the organization last won a NASCAR Cup Series championship. They were also still looking for their first full season championship with manufacturer Ford, despite winning 25 races in the past 3 seasons. Carrying the banner would once again be the Ford team led by veteran driver Kevin Harvick and crew chief Rodney Childers. The group was fresh off of a career year in 2020, one that saw Happy Harvick smile a lot more with a career-high 9 victories and his first career regular season championship. An elite 33 races this team put together, and yes, I said that right, 33. Because this team would have a monumental collapse thanks to Harvick hitting the wall early in the race at Texas, leading to no stage points and a 17th place finish. The next week at Martinsville, once again the Ford team missed the setup horribly at the paperclip, running as low as 32nd in this race. Kevin Harvick would rally, but he would need to take out Kyle Busch to advance, which failed, officially eliminating Kevin Harvick from winning the 2020 NASCAR Championship. A heartbreaking way to lose the title, but the Ford team was going to be back once again. I mean, just look at past history. Kevin Harvick and Rodney Childers have been kicked down before, and sometimes those moments of failure have allowed this team to rise to its greatest heights ever. No question they're going to be back with a vengeance. Teammate Aric Almirola, meanwhile, went into the season hoping to finally make that leap to championship contender. He and Mike Bugaravich showed flashes of contention in 2020, which included an incredible streak of 5 straight top 5 finishes during the stretch run of the summer. Still, the Smithfield Ford Mustang, even fueled by bacon, didn't have enough power to get to victory lane. Almirola's lone win at SHR remained his 2018 victory at Talladega, a race where he was arguably a fuel merchant with both Harvick and Kurt Busch running out of fuel in NASCAR overtime. Another decent round of 12 season wasn't going to cut it. With this being year 4, the expectation was for Aric Almirola to win. As for Cole Custer's rookie season, he had a steep learning curve in the COVID-plagued 2020 season without practice or qualifying. Still, he managed to pull off the upset at Kentucky, a win that not only locked him into the playoffs, but one that propelled him over Tyler Reddick and Christopher Bell in the Rookie of the Year battle, since, of course, the season-ending points rank is all that matters in terms of awarding the Rookie of the Year award. With a second year of he and Mike Shiplin in the Cup Series, the hope was that Custer could grow in his driver development now that he was returning to tracks for the 2nd, 3rd, and even the 4th time in his career. Potentially, his successful rookie year was just the tip of the iceberg, and he had the chance to have an even better sophomore campaign. However, for the 5th straight season, there would be change in the 4-car stable. Change coming in the Fame 14, made successful by co-owner Tony Stewart. Clint Bowyer turned in the fire suit for a suit and tie, joining Mike Joy and Jeff Gordon to form the best NASCAR on Fox booth since 2015. That same year, believe it or not, Indiana native and Tony Stewart idol Chase Briscoe made his first ARCA start, beginning the process of paying favors, sweeping floors, and performing tasks to climb up the ladder and get into a good position. His hard work resulted in a breakout 2020 campaign with 9 checkered flags and nearly the season championship. Now, he would officially get to race his idol's car in the NASCAR Cup Series, hoping to not just win the Rookie of the Year nod, but to also make the postseason. And considering the 14 team he was left with, it was a possibility. Johnny Klausmeier, in fact, had yet to miss the NASCAR playoffs in his Cup Series crew chiefing career. As for the guy that would be replacing Chase Briscoe in the Xfinity 98, that would be Riley Herbst. And all I gotta say on this was the negative echo chamber known as NASCAR Twitter, they absolutely love this guy. His first full-time season in the Xfinity number 18 was a struggle, and I think that's the best way you can sum it up. If there was some hope for the guy nicknamed Terrible, he would get Richard Boswell and the same 98 team that the field chased all season long. Plus, you could say Herbst at Joe Gibbs Racing, he was rushed into Xfinity. He was going to be a much better driver in his sophomore season with a year of full-time racing in his rearview mirror. The stage was set for Stewart Haas Racing to kick some major tailpipe once again without anything standing in the way of NASCAR domination. Except for some new templates for the 2021 season. NASCAR made a change in the offseason to re-add the wheel well template to the tech process, making it harder for manufacturers and teams to manipulate the area to gain a competitive advantage. This would prove to close the gap between powerhouse teams and the back of the field, resulting in a lot more parity to start the year. 7 different drivers won the first 7 races. Meanwhile, the dominant organization of 2020 was a part of 0 of those victories. Stewart Haas Racing was hit hot and heavy with these rule changes, plaguing their finishing results in a season with minimal practice and qualifying to better their performance outside of the heat of the race. It was most notable with veteran driver Aric Almirola. Suddenly, a utility driver who Tony Stewart could always rely on was struggling to even finish in the top 20. The first 8 races were catastrophic. Due to on-track incidents and bad luck, Almirola had, count 'em up, 4 finishes 30th or worse. And in most of those races, they got their chassis handed to them in a big way, only scoring 1 top 15 finish at the Phoenix Raceway. The Bacon King would finish up a dismal first half to the regular season with back-to-back 37th place finishes. Darlington due to a collision with the Tide Ride, then at Dover, while running in the top 10, his tire cut down to cause the Smithfield Ford to retire from the race once again. Cole Custer would be the next one to falter. He actually started off solid. Entering Homestead, coming off of back-to-back top 15 finishes, Cole Custer was on the cusps of his first top 10 of the year. Then with 2 laps to go, a tire was starting to go flat on the Cole Custer machine, forcing him to ride it out and finish in the disappointing 23rd position. The next week at Las Vegas, the 41 team suffered a lug nut violation, losing Mike Shiplett for the next race in Phoenix, a race where Bubba Wallace essentially took him out on the back straightaway. These races gave them a horrible start, put them behind the 8 ball, and set the tone for the season. Like Almirola, his tailpipe was ravaged and he wouldn't get another top 15 until Talladega in April. In May, a month where things were supposed to blossom, Custer would have his potential withered away with some more rotten luck. Wrecking on Mother's Day in the Mother's Day car of all things, then being an innocent bystander in the NASFrauded race at COTA. Without the organizational speed, one of the core strengths of rookie Chase Briscoe was muzzled. He had to compensate for the lack of performance by pushing the cars beyond their edge, leading to some rookie mistakes and results just like Almirola and Custer. Alright, so since the other 3 cars are struggling, that must mean Kevin Harvick is carrying this team on his back with record-setting weight, causing his spinal cord to bend in the process. For the most part, Kevin Harvick and Rodney Childers were at least treading water with the competition, although it was clear they had lost their 2018 to 2020 magic. The Ford team straight up at a 20th place car at Las Vegas, arguably the worst performance from Kevin Harvick and Rodney Childers in their Stewart Haas careers to date. Phoenix, Atlanta, and Dover, known to be places where the 4 car was tough to beat, would see Harvick record goose eggs in the laps led column in all 3 of those races. In fact, it wasn't until race 12 of the season where Harvick would lead his first laps of the season at a track not named Daytona or Talladega. For the first time since he joined Stewart Haas Racing, Kevin Harvick was not considered as a contender for the championship. He just wasn't. Disfavored compared to all 4 cars at Hendrick, the Big 3 at JGR, and the captain's fleet at Penske, all of whom were leading laps and contending for wins. Stewart Haas Racing was short of horsepower racing, lacking the horses in a big way during the 600-mile test of endurance and equipment known as the Coca-Cola 600. Kevin Harvick had a mediocre night with a 10th place finish. Cole Custer, Aric Almirola, and Chase Briscoe, however, would fare much worse, finishing 21st, 22nd, and 23rd respectively, each 3 laps off of the incredible pace set by Kyle Larson. Following NASCAR's biggest points race of the season, the 4 Haas cars combined for just 13 stage points, all of them earned by Kevin Harvick, who was the only SHR driver in a playoff spot. although for Harvick, 9th place was nothing to be proud of. The next closest Stewart Haas car was Chase Briscoe all the way down in 25th, almost 2 entire races below the playoff cut line. Cole Custer found himself in 27th and Aric Almirola ranked 28th. Nearly 3 full races outside of a playoff spot and a complete 180 from his 9th place rank after race 15 of the 2020 season. Following another disappointing race in Sonoma, race number 17 in Nashville didn't just mark as the return of Tennessee's biggest city to the NASCAR circuit. It was also the first time in 16 months that co-owner Tony Stewart was at the track. He wasn't considered a magic figure to this team in any way, but certainly all the drivers were glad to have him back. With the boss in attendance, there was a lot of added incentive to perform. Aric Almirola put the Smithfield Ford on the pole and had a decent 4th place run. Kevin Harvick, running a special Gravedigger paint job, finished right behind him in 5th. Just the 3rd time in 17 races that more than 2 SHR Fords had finished in the top 10, and the first with 2 finishers inside the top 5. Meanwhile, Cole Custer was on pace for a top 10 before he reported brake issues and later had a right rear tire go down on lap 172, damaging the brake rotor and ending his chances of a good run. Chase Briscoe, same story. His brakes faded away, which caused him to crash out of the 400-mile race. Although the team raced a lot better than what they were accustomed to in 2021, the team combined for just 1 lap led on the afternoon, far off from the total Hendrick Motorsports put up in this race. It was their biggest race of the season until their return trip to Atlanta, especially after a quote from Rodney Childers suggested that this was going to be the peak of Stewart Haas Racing. So from a car's side, we're not really going to make the cars much better than where they're at this weekend at Atlanta. This was the optimal race for Kevin Harvick to begin a second half surge, yet his mediocre performance from the first half continued yet again. Harvick finished outside the top 10 for just the 2nd time at Atlanta since 2010. Nowhere near the results and the speed that Kevin Harvick had shown at this track in a big way from 2017 to 2020. Meanwhile, it was clear Aric Almirola and the 10 team were pushing for that Hail Mary, hoping for a rain-delayed race at Atlanta to get them their golden ticket and bail out 5 months of awful results. Ultimately, they would lose their chance when the rain cell dispersed with minimal precipitation. Stewart Haas Racing finished their true test of performance with all 4 of its cars finishing outside the top 10. Not ideal at all for a team with ambitions of the Bill France Cup. The next weekend at Loudon, the Stewart Haas Racing team would be welcomed with some good news. After this week, there wouldn't be another NASCAR race for another 3 weeks. You can't get your tailpipe kicked if you aren't racing. Also good news was the fact that New Hampshire was a strong spot for the Fords, riding a 3-race win streak dating back to Kevin Harvick's bump and run-esque move on Kyle Busch in 2018. However, the Toyotas would be the ones to beat, and certainly Stewart Haas Racing would need a bit of a miracle to take out some of these competitive cars and have a true shot to capture this checkered flag.
Oh, we got a car on the wall. That's 2 cars. True accident.
It's raining. Raining in turn 1.
It all of a sudden just started raining.
That right there was the break they needed. Kyle Busch was done and Martin Truex Jr. was badly wounded. The race was wide open for the taking, and it was the one day where Stewart Haas Racing flexed a bit of muscle. Kevin Harvick led a season-high 66 laps to assert himself in the mix of contenders. However, it wasn't Happy Harvick carrying the torch for SHR, but Aric Almirola of all drivers. Mike Bugaravich brought this car to life in Stage 3, passing Harvick, Keselowski, and Blaney to take the lead as the race's 3rd and final act was coming to a close. Aric Almirola was getting ready to celebrate with confetti in the form of bacon bits, and despite a hard-charging Christopher Bell, the sun and New Hampshire's inability to install a proper lighting system would make that dream come true.
But the lead is a little bit too big for Christopher Bell. Aric Almirola with the upset at New Hampshire.
At least in 2021, it was over. The winless drought of Stewart Haas Racing was over, and Aric Almirola had won the Sunset Shortened New Hampshire race. A small ray of light for the organization as Harvick and Almirola combined to lead 91 laps, giving them some confidence and momentum to work harder in the Olympic break. Maybe this right here was the win to ignite a flame and rally the organization to get all 4 cars a win and a golden ticket to the NASCAR playoffs. At Indianapolis, Chase Briscoe was in position to do the same. Growing up with the Indianapolis road course in his backyard, it was a track he was all too familiar with. Case in point is victory in the inaugural NASCAR event at this configuration a year earlier. And all afternoon, it was clear Chase Briscoe had a car capable of winning the race, ultimately putting himself in position to pull his own Hail Mary and join Almirola in the playoffs. Unfortunately, NASCAR had other plans. Despite getting forced into the grass, NASCAR enforced a NAS-frauded black flag to end his chances at winning and essentially his chances at the postseason. He would also show a bit of inexperience by dumping Denny Hamlin out of the win, and ultimately just an all-around horrible finish for Chase Briscoe. In terms of final chances, both he and Cole Custer struggled at Michigan, and the two failed to get into position at Daytona. Both would fail to make the playoffs for the first time in their NASCAR Cup careers. The lack of winners meant some good news for Kevin Harvick, even as his performance continued to slog behind his expectations. Stewart Haas Racing would have 2 cars fighting for the championship. The journey, however, it would be steep to say the least. Aric Almirola entered as the 14th seed, tied for the final transfer spot. Kevin Harvick, 1 year after winning the regular season championship, entered as the Cinderella 16th seed, looking to upset playoff brackets across the land. There was no question the two would need points, and a lot of them. Something both Aric Almirola and Kevin Harvick did a solid job of in the first 2 races. Both drivers stayed out of trouble and out of the horrible finishes to put them in a deep hole to enter the cutoff race at Bristol above the playoff cut line. 25 points ahead for Harvick and 3 for Almirola. Although Aric Almirola and his 10 team would be battle tested with playoff pressure constantly in the elimination race. The team was forced to change an oil liner after a lap 160 caution, and at Bristol of all places, remarkably, the team stayed on the lead lap. The entire 10 pit crew came in clutch to save Almirola's season, until the team opted to stay out on older tires for the final restart, making the handling a lot tougher for Almirola, fading all the way back to 18th place while William Byron rallied to finish 3rd. Earning enough points to officially eliminate Aric Almirola in the round of 16. Kevin Harvick, meanwhile, was in the fight for his first victory of the year. It had been a whole calendar year since his last visit to NASCAR's most sacred temple, and he wanted another taste at the top badly. So much so that he drove it in deep and made contact with race leader Chase Elliott, slashing his left rear tire. Elliott, angry at how he was raced, would send a message to Harvick, sideswiping his car and taking his line on the final run of the race. Kevin Harvick failed to adapt and lost the race to Kyle Larson, despite, of course, his best efforts to send Speed Racer into the wall not once, but twice. Regardless of the emotional loss, Kevin Harvick's season was still alive, still with a chance to pull a Tony Stewart 2011. You'd think he'd put the loss behind him as a championship driver and look towards winning the Bill France Cup, but that was not the case at all. Harvick spent the Las Vegas pre-race comparing Chase Elliott to a 9-year-old and trash-talking him to death. However, in those 2 races, Harvick did get 2 top 10 finishes, and the 4 team would enter the Charlotte Roval within striking distance of engine number 9, meaning that retaliation could be his ticket to the round of 8. Although with a 2nd place finish in stage 2, he had the opportunity to advance without beating the 9. Especially with Brad Keselowski and Martin Truex Jr. having subpar days for their standards. Regardless, Kevin Harvick would send a message to Chase Elliott that he took away something that was clearly his, that being the Bristol victory, and now Harvick would take something away from Chase Elliott, that being a ticket to the round of 8. But what Harvick didn't expect was that the damage wasn't too severe, and a few timely cautions would get Chase Elliott back into the race, leading to the most memorable moment of Kevin Harvick's 2021 season. The crowd at Charlotte may have been sparse that day, but as Kevin Harvick exited the car, he was greeted to a loud chorus of cheers. The wreck officially ended his and Stewart Haas Racing's championship hopes in the round of 12, a first for both. So I'm sure you guys may be wondering, how's Riley Herbst doing? To say it straightforward, terrible. The 98 team spent a majority of the regular season below the playoff cut line. It would in fact take a Michael Annett injury and a late regular season rally just to make the 12-driver postseason. One that would end as soon as it started. Riley Herbst DNF'd out of all 3 races due to a Swiss Army knife of issues, eliminating the 9 race winners a year ago from championship contention in the round of 12, without any wins or good performances to this season. Like the Cup program, Riley Herbst and Richard Boswell got it shoved up their tailpipes, leading to yet another massive failure for Stewart Haas Racing in 2021. Back to Cup, the final 4 races officially became lame duck ones for SHR, as there wasn't much they could do performance-wise with this being the final year of the Gen 6 car. Still, this could be a great display of team building to build up the confidence in a disappointed group. Kevin Harvick ended the season in position to win a few races, looking the most competitive he has all season with fast Mustangs at Texas, Kansas, and Phoenix. The surge of speed earned him enough points to end the season 5th in points after starting the playoffs as the 16 seed. This was his exact points finish in 2020. But for a team that had championship ambitions, 2020 was an absolute failure. This marked as his first winless season since the beginning of the Obama administration. It would also be the 4 team's first winless season in team history. The only thing really worth celebrating for Kevin Harvick was the fact that he technically got back at Chase Elliott, costing him 3 victories compared to Chase only costing Harvick Bristol. Aric Almirola would end the season with back-to-back 6th place finishes, his first top 10 streak of the entire season. Oddly enough, he too finished the year in the same points position as 2020. He did so with just 5 top 5 finishes, his lowest total at Stewart Haas Racing and lower than 4 of his 6 years at Richard Petty Motorsports. Almirola also completed the 5th least laps amongst full-time drivers. Albeit, Almirola was the only driver to remain at least on par with his preseason expectations, getting the win at New Hampshire. Chase Briscoe clinched the 2021 Rookie of the Year, but that was about it for high points for a team sponsored by High Point. With a 23rd place finish in the season point standings, the 14 team had a point standings differential of -11, the worst drop of any team from 2020 in the 2021 standings. For a team led by a crew chief that had never missed the playoffs, this rookie season was an absolute failure for everyone involved. After winning 9 XFINITY races the year before, Chase Briscoe was one of the most disappointing drivers of the 2021 season. Finally, Cole Custer ended his sophomore season outside the top 25 in points, putting up Danica Patrick-like statistics with just 2 top 10s. The worst for a full-time Stewart Haas Racing driver since Miss Patrick's farewell tour in 2017. Also, with a package that makes it easier to stay on the lead lap at intermediate tracks and more road courses, Custer finished on the lead lap in just 17 races. I know he had a lot of bad luck this season, but that right there is unacceptable. Also, remember that Daniel Suarez guy, the driver that was cut from the team after one season? With a brand new team, he outpointed his successor by nearly a full race, something that did not make Cole Custer look very good. As for the organization, the 4-car powerhouse managed to win just 1 race, their lowest total in team history. And arguably, with another 10 minutes of daylight, Stewart Haas Racing could have easily been shut out completely in 2021. So why was this season for Gene Haas and Tony Stewart a disaster, so nightmarish in nature? The new templates restricted them from their true potential. As Rodney Childers stated, it knocked 70 counts of downforce off the cars. And when you knock that amount of downforce off, especially when it mainly comes from the rear, it just completely messes up your aero balance. And when it messes up your aero balance, you have limited wind tunnel time. It's hard to get that figured out before the season starts. You can also point towards the parts freeze NASCAR implemented back in 2019. The Ford team struggled all year with horsepower and couldn't make any changes due to all the parts for the year having already been submitted to NASCAR. Finally, it just seemed like Tony Stewart was distracted by his SRX endeavor and his girlfriend's NHRA races, causing him to lose focus on the NASCAR program and its lagging performance. Will Stewart Haas Racing bounce back in 2022? I honestly don't see why they wouldn't, especially with just how bad, how nightmarish this 2021 season turned out to be. So anyways, this is Nathan for NRF Productions signing out, and just remember, life's a beach and then you drive.